So the Nintendo Switch 2 has been out for a couple of weeks now, and it's already given us a lot of things. A Mario Kart where you get absolutely nuked every 0.25 seconds, a relatively empty wallet, and a Pokemon game that surprisingly runs like a video game should run. Which means the time has come, my friends. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's JPR, and after 3 long years, let's finally take a look back at Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Now, the reason why this review took so long is because I, for one, believe that replay value is one of the most important features that a Pokemon game has to offer. It's why my negative stance on Pokemon X and Y has softened over time, and why I'll never touch Diamond and Pearl with a 150-foot pole ever again. Because, like any game, Pokemon games have a very different initial impression versus their lasting impression. And Scarlet and Violet are no exception. But there was one problem. I physically could not replay these games for the longest time. The fact that these games ran like a Snorlax doing a 100-meter sprint was such a massive turnoff to me. I would feel genuinely nauseated if I tried to play these games for longer than half an hour with just how jerky everything was. Not to mention that the game's battles just process information at such a sluggish pace that it genuinely feels like a Gen 4 game at times. And not in the good ways. While there were bits and pieces of Scarlet and Violet that I enjoyed on Switch 1, I could not stomach a second replay of these games. Because the entire experience was just being dragged down by the game's horrid performance. I knew that if I attempted a second replay on the original hardware, I was going to hate it. So it brings me great joy to finally be able to play Scarlet and Violet again without the Gigantamax Caparajah in the room. I am so glad that I can finally properly review these games without the performance affecting my enjoyment of literally everything. Now, let me be clear that just because I'm not going to talk about the performance issues any further in this video, that I am not excusing the sorry state that this game launched in. It should never have come out in 2022, and being able to play this game in its intended state should not be locked behind a brand new $450 console. I still think it's embarrassing that the game was launched in the state that it was, and it pains me that the majority of the 26 million people who bought Scarlet and Violet will likely never experience it on the Switch 2. But that's all I'm going to say about it for now, because quite frankly, the performance conversation has been dragging on for 3 years now, and I think we're all just a little bit tired of hearing about it. It is what it is, so let's just focus on the other aspects of the game for now. So I think I'll start with a positive point. The ability to go anywhere at any time and catch any Pokemon you want with little restrictions is phenomenal and something we had all been begging for after years of Game Freak holding our hands and treating us all like 5-year-olds who can't figure out where to go without it being explicitly told to us. This really started around Generation 4 and has progressively gotten worse with every passing game. Until now, I would say. The worst Scarlet and Violet makes you do is sit through a painfully long tutorial section, which I will say is the worst part about replaying it. People gave Legends Arceus a hard time for how slow its beginning is, but man, people do not talk about how agonizingly slow Scarlet and Violet's first couple hours are. And especially on a second replay, when I already know how meaningless the Academy really is to the game, the whole process of getting you acclimated to Academy life just to say, nah, it doesn't really matter, go get mauled by a pack of Pangoros, feels like a ton of wasted time. But once the training wheels are finally off and you can start choosing the path of your own adventure, that's where the game really opens up. For me personally, I chose to Nuzlocke my second playthrough, and it was a genuine joy to go through the starting areas and plan out which Pokemon from each area I would add to my team. I also have to note that this is where terrestrialization really shines. Pun not entirely intended. I think it's an absolutely brilliant mechanic that adds a ton of uniqueness to a playthrough, because it basically means that nearly all 400 Pokemon in the region have 18 different possible variants to encounter and play with. Like, I ended up doing a raid and adding a Terra Ice Luxray to my team. That option was never around the first time I played. I know Mega Evolution truthers are going to crucify me for this, but honestly, I think Terra is my favorite mechanic. Also, having the DLC from the beginning really opens up your options too. Kitakami really does not feel that fun to play through as post-game material, as I'm sure most of us did when it first came out. Like, dude, Kieran's level 60 Yanma is still a Yanma. That is not what I would call fun and interactive gameplay. But when everything is scaled down to like level 15 to level 40, and the whole thing just acts as an early game bonus area, that's where it really shines. Personally, I think it adds even more to the game than the Isle of Armor added to Sword and Shield. And because of this, I was able to add tons of cool Pokemon to my team very early, like Swinub, Heracross, Dipplin, and even a Turtwig I got from an egg from Jacques. Having access to Kitakami means you'll have hundreds of Pokemon to pick and choose from only a few hours into the game. as opposed to most Pokemon games where you're limited to a few dozen in the early stages. You can also visit Blueberry Academy early, but everything is still like level 60, so you won't be doing much catching there. Mostly just TM crafting and getting that good blueberry drip because there's no shot in playing this entire game with orange pants. But yeah, having Kitakami from the start is actually such a game changer. And it made my second playthrough feel completely different from my first right off the bat. Between the DLC and the improved resolution and frame rates that the Switch 2 offers, this really does feel like what a third enhanced version of Scarlet and Violet would have been like. On the note of differences between the first playthrough and the second, I felt like with the Switch 2 making everything so much less of a drag, I engaged in so much more of the material. Originally, I didn't do a lot of Academy classes on Switch 1 because the loading screens for each class were like 20 seconds long. Do you have any idea how many Instagram Reels I can watch in 20 seconds? I was never going to do all these. Although, after doing most of these classes for the first time, I have to say, why is the midterm in Battle Studies not a battle against Dendra? This could have been an awesome secret boss that really added some value to Academy classes, but sadly most of the classes just seem pretty copy and pasted from each other. The Switch 2's improved processing time also seemingly makes the battles a lot faster than the original game. So I ended up fighting significantly more trainers around Paldea and Kitakami than I did the first time. Admittedly, it is disappointing that most trainers only have a single Pokemon, but I do love the inclusion of the boss trainers with black text boxes who have significantly stronger teams than the average NPC. They're kinda reminiscent of the Route Kahunas from Sun and Moon. The sheer volume of trainers in this game also made it really easy to manage multiple Pokemon at once. See, in the older games, I usually just stuck to a team of 6 and never deviated from it because grinding is such a chore. In this game, you have to approach it very differently because of how easy it is to become overleveled. Around the midway point, I was juggling about 30 different Pokemon that I was switching in and out of my team, just trying to stay under the level cap of the next gym while fighting as many trainers as possible. Every single Pokemon you see in this box is around the same level, and honestly, I kinda liked it. I didn't really like it the first time I played the game because I was trying to be traditional about building my team, and well, you can't really play this game the traditional way. It'll be way too easy if you do. On that note, the game is still a little too easy. Yes, it's harder than X and Y or Sword and Shield, so it's not like goo goo gaga easy, but it's like pretty close. Part of the problem is that for whatever reason they chose not to do level scaling despite this being an open world game, so it seemed like their solution to this problem was just giving every gym leader the worst movesets known to man. For example, Kofu's Crabominable should be at the level where it should naturally have Ice Punch and Brick Break, but they give it Slam and Rock Smash so that you can beat this guy if you happen to challenge him 10 levels too early. Which means, if you're the same level as any gym leader in this game, you'll probably wipe the floor with them. I'm not sure why this problem seems exclusive to gym leaders though, as the Team Star admins and Titan Pokemon actually seem to have the appropriate moves for their levels, although a lot of them still only have 2 or 3 moves per Pokemon for some reason. Regardless, the Team Star bosses are at least a pretty fun challenge, even if the gameplay of their bases is, well, not good. I know some people like that this game has no level scaling because it means that you can challenge higher level foes early and have a true challenge, but it inevitably means that a solid chunk of the game is just going to be mind-numbingly easy, no matter what order you do things in. Somehow, this game is terrible at telling you what to do next, while also not providing the appropriate level scaling. In Pokemon Origins, they clearly show us that gym leaders select their Pokemon based on the skill level of the trainers they're facing, and a ton of people imagined that Scarlet and Violet would finally bring this concept to life. Alas, it seems we'll have to wait. But hey, guess what? You won't have to wait to see my next video if you just subscribe to the channel. Most of my viewers aren't subscribed, and that really makes me sad, so please do it. Unfortunately, this is just one of many issues with the open world design in this game. While it has the enormous pro of being able to capture Pokemon from any region at any time, it suffers many drawbacks as well. For starters, this open world has very little to offer outside of Pokemon and items, which is like the bare minimum in a Pokemon game. As the game progresses, it becomes very apparent that this game has very little incentive for actually interacting with its world. Because this game has no side quests, and aside from Pokemon materials for TM crafting, there really aren't any collectibles to look out for aside from Gimmighoul coins and the occasional stake for the ruinous legendaries, none of the areas really feel interesting to traverse or remotely challenging for that matter. See, as an adult with limited free time, I appreciate how Scarlet and Violet streamlines so many features and annihilates any need for grinding. That is one of the game's best features. But as a gamer, I also like being rewarded for venturing off the beaten path to find rare Pokemon or items. And this game, sadly, does not scratch that itch at all. I sort of miss the old days where it was like, oh, you want this cool Firestone? Well then show me a particular Pokemon you caught, or solve this strength puzzle, or venture to the end of this optional cave area. Even Legends Arceus got this right with the crafting system, where you were encouraged to hunt down materials in the open world and use them to create more valuable items. In this game, I feel like I never really have to look for anything. I just assume that inevitably I'll come across that cool Pokemon at some point and I'll just chuck an Ultra Ball at it and call it a day. Or if I need an evolution stone, it will just be randomly generated on the landscape for me to pick up eventually. There is a fine line between convenience and making the player actually engage with the game. A line that I think Legends Arceus actually walked fairly well. Alpha Pokemon were powerful, but also threatening and hard to catch. You could make any item at any time, but you had to put in the work to do so. Scarlet and Violet is cool because it's an open world game, but unfortunately, it doesn't really take advantage of the fact that it's an open world game. Other than just allowing you to do things in any order you like, which we already covered how that wasn't even done particularly well. The single biggest issue with this game, now that the performance is fixed, is that Paldea just isn't very interesting. Not geographically, not even in its inspiration. I played this game with my girlfriend watching most of it, and she loves Spain. She has visited that country for months at a time. She is very familiar with Spanish culture and all of its cities and landmarks, and she was so disappointed at how little of that comes through in this game. Aside from a few Pokemon designs and the localization team making sure the occasional NPC utters a Spanish phrase, this region does not feel like it embodies Spain as well as Galar, Alola, and Kalos all embody their real-life inspirations. Although she did say that Madrid is indeed a massive hole, so I guess they got that right. Yes, Area Zero is cool, but I'm not talking about Area Zero, I'm talking about the region more broadly. Like, for instance, the cities. They're all so cool looking and each have their own little thing they're known for, but they're just so boring. There's nothing to do in any of them aside from the gym battles, and there is not a single meaningful interaction that you'll have with an NPC throughout this entire game, aside from maybe the guy who makes the armor for Charcadet to evolve. That's about it. I hate using this word, but the region just feels lifeless. Yes, there are dozens of Pokemon roaming around the landscape, especially on the Switch 2 where there are more Pokemon than you could possibly imagine. But that's the expectation for any open world Pokemon game. What I mean by lifeless is that everything is very surface level. It feels like I can gloss over every aspect of this region and miss nothing of importance in the process, and that sucks. I will note that Blueberry Academy somewhat fixes this issue through the BBQs and forcing you to interact with all the areas of the game to build up your league room. I actually quite like that, but I would like to still see some more work done in this department. A list of randomly generating and repetitive tasks is not quite what I'm looking for. Now, most people would say that the game makes up for this with its story, and if I'm being real, my hot take is, I don't think the story is all that. And yes, I mean even by Pokemon standards, I'm not expecting Xenoblade or Expedition 33 level of storytelling here. I think most people are conflating the characters with the overall story, and yes, I'll give you that Arven, and Penny to an extent, are pretty good characters. Doesn't make up for Gita or most of the others, but hey, I'm trying to be positive here. But the three main storylines are really just a series of repetitive events with no momentum behind them at all. It's only the fourth and final storyline that's actually interesting. I get it, it's hard to make a story with moving components when you have an open world game that allows completion of events in various different orders. It's the exact same problem that the last two open world Zeldas have suffered from, in my opinion. And for the most part, I think they did a good job making a story that doesn't disrupt the flow of gameplay that much. But a few more revelations or something different from just challenging a Team Star base or seeing Arven's Mabosstiff get slightly better every time you beat a Titan would have been appreciated. But I routinely see people saying this game has as good of a story as Sun and Moon or Black and White, and I'm sorry, but I'm just not seeing it. Once again, Area Zero, fantastic. I will give this game its flowers. It ends on such a high note that you kind of forget how boring the story is for 90% of it. I really enjoyed Area Zero's geography, its paradox Pokemon, and the twist the story went through there. But when you're replaying the game, you shouldn't be thinking, I just have to make it through these 20 hours so I get one good hour in Area Zero. I mean, you can think that, just know that I don't. Anyhow, I know I've been really negative for the last 3 pages of the script, so I just want to end on a positive note. I actually really did enjoy my replay of Scarlet and Violet. And I feel like this game is significantly more enjoyable on Switch 2 when half the game's features actually feel like they're working properly. You can actually roll the olive at the first gym without your Switch feeling like it's gonna catch on fire. You can do the academy classes that are taking 2 years of your life away. You won't want to profusely vomit every time you run on the back of Koraidon, even if the game still looks pretty ugly. To me, the Switch 2 vaulted this game from "I never want to touch this ever again" to "this is a pretty solid Pokemon game that I would like to routinely revisit." It is not perfect by any means, and I hope I articulated those points as well as I possibly could. But you know, I'd put it in a solid B+ tier at least. Sure, the only major positive in this game's defense might be that you can go anywhere and catch hundreds of Pokemon at your whimsy, but man, that is a big point to win. That 1 point is worth like 5 points. It means that no 2 replays of Scarlet and Violet will be exactly alike, even if they all will hit the same annoying speed bumps along the way. Is it better than Sword and Shield? Yes. Better than Let's Go Pikachu or BDSP? God yes. Better than Legends Arceus? God no. But at the end of the day, it's fun. And if you have fun with it, that's all that really matters, right? I would just like to see more of the finer details be cleaned up and fleshed out in the next game. Because the foundation for open world Pokemon is a good one. And now, with the proper hardware behind it, and Game Freak hopefully learning a thing or two along the way, maybe we will get something truly special in Gen 10. I'm optimistic for the future. But yeah, those are all of my thoughts on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet nearly 3 years later. I'm sure that they will continue to grow and evolve as time goes on, but yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like if you did, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.